Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Tony here. Thanks for joining us again. Today we have a great guest, Bill Baumel, and we're going to be talking about venture capitalism. He's with the Ohio Innovation Fund. Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
And so we're going to be talking about that, a little bit about your road to here, but I want to be talking about how you guys help companies, what type of companies you help, of course, and just about the industry as a whole. So tell
Sure.
us about your background because you've been in this business for a long time.
Sure. I actually grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay.
Went to high school there. Went to the Ohio State University. Then I went to University of Michigan graduate school. And while I was there, there's a professor, David Brophy, who taught the venture capital course, and he had actually played hockey at Ohio State, so we had some mutual ties to Ohio. And I became his teaching assistant, and we created the Office of Study of Private Equity Finance. That was the first of its kind of as an office to study and interact with venture capitalists.
Is it still there?
It's still there. It's actually now a center.
Okay.
It's now the Center for Venture Capital. Yeah.
Is your name on there?
No, but I claim to be one of the founders.
Right.
He actually does credit me with helping.
Okay.
But and I was very fortunate in that I was going to go off and do consulting in Boston. And in April, about 2 weeks before I graduated, we had an advisory board meeting. And Bart Holliday, the managing partner of Brinson Partners, which is now Adam Street Capital, that was run by Bond French then for a while, came in and said, "I need an associate," and told Dave that. And Dave said, "Bill, is your person." And so I flew to Chicago, came back the next day, an offer, and I was off in venture capital in Chicago. So I spent about 5 years in the Midwest doing kind of getting my feet wet in venture capital.
Right.
A lot of companies in Chicago, Minneapolis, but also a lot on the East Coast, quite a few in Boston, a little bit in New York, a little bit in Atlanta. And then about 20 years ago, had the opportunity to go out to Silicon Valley.
Well, let me, one second.
Yeah.
So you graduated from Michigan, so 95, 94, right?
Yeah,
Somewhere
yeah.
around there. So only because now the world was a lot different. It wasn't
was,
all that
yeah.
long ago. It was a lot different. I mean, email, I think, was kind of becoming more prevalent
A little bit, yeah.
within companies, but still. So was it mainly still technology? Did you get even in Chicago? I mean,
Yeah.
what type of companies did you start with?
It was interesting. Chicago got, because I'm not an engineer, because I don't have an engineering background, so I'm very unusual from that perspective in getting into tech venture capital. I do both tech and med tech, but at the time, like you said, the internet was just starting out. And so what Brinson Partners, they started noticing that, hey, there's a lot of stuff going on in wireless and something about what's called ISDN modems and all this stuff going on, and this something DSL, ADSL stuff. We need someone to understand that. So they actually sent me to training at the time as Ameritech before the consolidations,
Okay.
which was one of the regional Bell operating companies, and to Motorola, and to different places to learn about different wireless and wire, networking technology. So I actually started out mostly in telecommunications and a little bit in software.
Okay.
And from telecommunications, I branched out a natural branch then in enterprise networking.
Okay.
And then from there, eventually, most of my funds have been about 70% technology, 30% med tech. So that kind of got me exposed to the med tech piece as well. But I actually started out in telecommunications during the big boom. And I actually, one of the companies I founded in Minneapolis was the first fiber to the home, fiber to the building company. At that time, there's a lot of people would say, "Geez, fiber to the home, fiber to the building, it's a couple decades away."
Right.
And on the home side, it was, but on the onto the business, that's where we got started. And actually, it grew. It eventually had partners like Corning and others that had an interest in it. And now it's part of a public company called Calyx. The two kind of merged together and out there. So that's kind of how I got my start.
Well, good. So then that from the Midwest, then you went out to Silicon Valley.
Then I went to Silicon Valley, spent 20 years there. Like I said, about 78% of my investments were in the tech area, about 20% in the med tech area. Had a number of companies go public, still north of $1 billion market cap, like Infinera and such. And then sold about 10 companies for anywhere from 100 million to a little bit over $1 billion to acquirers such as SAP, Intuit, Stryker, Medtronic, and such. And then I was actually I'd been keeping in touch with Ohio because having family here, so I'd come back each summer. And I was noticing back in maybe a little over a decade ago, I think we're still pretty far behind. One of the top companies highlighted to me was a company utilizing the cloud for disaster recovery. and they had a piece of paper in terms of what they're going to develop here in Ohio. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, there's already 15 of those companies in Silicon Valley, one of which I know is already north of $100 million in revenue, doing that plus.
Right.
But then when our founders, Ohio State and Ohio University, were the ones that said, hey, there's a lot of seed capital here, but not a lot of venture capital and not a lot of expertise in scaling companies. So they actually wanted to start a fund around that to have a traditional Silicon Valley type venture firm here in Columbus doing Series A, Series B investing. And they did a search and kind of the criteria, someone that can operate in Ohio, from Ohio, and then someone with Silicon Valley expertise. They contacted me. I came back. I looked at the companies being formed, and that's about late 2015. And they were similar to the types of companies I was working with out in Silicon Valley. Not as many of them, but there were some good cyber companies, some good data science companies, some good med tech companies, some good advanced manufacturing companies. And I thought, hey, I could actually build a reasonable, high-performing portfolio here and create the industries and jobs of the future for the students, alumni, families of Ohio, which is a passion.
So initially when they called you, I mean, you're remembering '08. I'm sure you saw a little bit over the years. Your first instinct was, no, we have a lot of stuff back in time.
Yeah,
and then you looked
it
into
was,
it
and then I looked through. I looked through the portfolios that I saw in some of the seed stage companies that were out there, and what potential those companies might have.
When you say seed stage, explain a little bit of it. Just
sure, absolutely. As far as we fit in, typically someone will have an idea, and usually, and what people also understand is that, like in Silicon Valley, Fairchild Semiconductor, that there'll be one company, and then that becomes successful, and out of that came Intel, National Semiconductor, Klein Perkins. I'm hoping the same thing happens here, where out of a company like Aware here in town, that is successful, and then there's multiple, the VP of engineering, the VP of marketing, the head of product, the CEO want to start new companies, and so they need either software ID and cybersecurity. And they'll need some initial capital to kind of do a proof of concept, do an initial software build, maybe a few $100,000, maybe $1 million, and they'll go get some seed investing. Very risky, early investment.
And what stage is that?
That's the early seed stage.
Okay.
And then it might be one person, it might be a handful of people just working on the basic product. What is it? Starting to build it. Maybe starting to reach out to initial customer too for market validation, product market fit, and figuring out that product market fit. As they get down that and actually have a product that is defined, a product that is being built, a product perhaps going into POCs, proof of concept at customers, they're like, okay, we need some venture capital or Series A round, which is where we come in, that then helps us build out the team, helps us continue to build out the product, helps us take this to market with a sales force, maybe not a huge sales force, but a few people. And we need marketing messaging. We need customer presentations. We need webinars. We need all this stuff, and that's usually a few $1 million to do that. And hopefully that's successful, and you get yourself to a few $1 million in revenue on that, and then you come back for a Series B saying, okay, we think we got this down now. Let's put some gas in the engine and maybe try and get up to $10 million in revenue and kind of replicate and scale what we're doing, which is kind of the end of the venture stage. After that stage, at 10 million plus in revenue, you're totally saying, okay, we know what we're doing here. We have a reasonable customer base. We have a product. We have a team in place. And usually that team looks a little bit different because usually the founders are more passionate, there's a different DNA to founder than there is to executive scale in the company. So typically at that point, you're bringing in executives to complement and scale the company with the founders. And then you go to the growth stage, which is, okay, we know we have something here. Let's grow this thing as fast as possible. And that's usually the Series C or beyond. So you usually have the seed round, which is seed investing, Series A and B, which is kind of venture capital, where the Ohio Innovation Fund fits in, and a Series C, or later stage, which is, all right, we're already $10 million in revenue, we're really ready to scale this thing and put a bunch of gas in the engine here and let this jet plane really take off.
Okay. So you're seeing people at stage A, basically.
Stage A and some stage B.
Yeah. Once they've proven a little bit that it is viable.
Yeah. We will typically, as a fund, have one seed company at a time, because seed companies, the success rate is like 1%. But we try and make that at least 30+% by working very closely with them and helping connect with customers, and helping hire a good product person, and helping try and define find product market fit so they can be successful. So every time, like we have one company right now, Data Anchor, in our offices, there as a seed company. That's actually a professor from Ohio State, Emory. He actually has a PhD from MIT, worked at Lincoln Labs there, and he has an idea that is actually cybersecurity has all been so far about walls. I want to keep out the bad people. I want to build this wall, build that wall, build this moat. He actually is using kind of intelligence by putting understanding what context you're operating in. Mm-hmm. And so you're only allowed to access data if you're in the right context. If you go out of the wrong context, you can't. But also the most important thing is he's actually putting encryption in the data. So at a company, you may be working, you may be a consultant to Nationwide, and you have sensitive data there, and you're working at it normally. Once you leave that position, the data is encrypted and turns back to normal state. Or you may be an employee that leaves, or that data may be stolen, right, but it has encryption inserted and built into it that can be flipped on and make the data unreadable. Okay. And so we're working with him on product market fit, and he actually we just started. We funded that about 6 months ago, and now have 8 proof of concepts underway. So we do some seed. We're primarily that Series A investor. Okay, well, cool.
Well, let me ask you we talk about these small companies that are growing up, and you specialize with tech and med tech.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different areas and things like that. What would you recommend to companies that think that they need some kind of infusion of money? They've done the seeding, they're past that. Well, they're at the seed stage, but it looks like they feel like they've got some successful. What should they do to reach out to someone like you?
Yeah, I think the earlier you reach out, the better. Okay. And particularly reach out before you need the money, because the companies we typically like to invest in the most in Silicon Valley there was one CEO who was CEO of Blue Arc, got sold for $800 million, a storage company, cloud company, then did his next company, sold that for $800 million. We typically like to know the people we're investing with. In the Midwest, in Ohio, a lot of these is much more first-time entrepreneurs, which is why we're so much in the trenches with these companies, helping with the business plan, helping with the product roadmap, helping with the financing syndicate. But to the extent you can reach out early on and talk to a venture capitalist, get to know them, they may also provide you with feedback. Right. And it's not time to invest now. We're just at seed stage, but here's what we're doing: get their feedback, get their buy-in, get their so you can kind of, it's a great feedback point. And then they even say, hey, you know what? You got to talk to this potential customer, that potential customer, what have you. And you build that relationship up so that when you're going for the financing, you have that relationship and they know what you're doing, they're bought into it, and they like what you're doing. Right.
Well, I've been in the manufacturing business, I'm of course the finance business, and we talked a little bit about this last week, but so many entrepreneurs are really good, have a really good skill set with something that they're creating, but they just don't know the unknowns. And that's why it's so important, I think, to involve people who have that expertise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, you may miss a big opportunity if you don't do it right. So I was joking before, but I do, Shark Tank is what I think most people realize, little venture capitalism, but it's a very quick hit and things like that. And that's not the relationship building, which is more so anything. I mean, they're presenting something for 5 minutes and taking it. But folks do need to be good at talking about what their idea is and being able to communicate that, and being able to talk to, show, because we're coming up with new ideas all the time.
Yeah.
You need to be able to really figure out, is there a need for it and how it's going to get done.
Yeah. And there's very few companies that can just present one slide, and if they could, it would work, which is, we started 3 years ago, we've grown from $1 million to $5 million to $15 million in revenue, and now we're going to 30 with your money. Clearly, if you have that level of success already, but most of it, you're coming when there's some initial indications of success, but you're still trying to figure out, okay, in the data science area, are we going to, is financial services the best, or healthcare, or manufacturing as far as who to target, or government, or what have you. And really getting that feedback, expertise, and relationship going is critical, and increases your success rate, tenfold in terms of, the venture capitalist is bought in, they understand what you're doing, and you're also not wasting your time, because through that process, it may be a good relationship, it may not be. Right. And you as an entrepreneur are going to find that out is in terms of, this venture capitalist I'm interacting with, these are just conversations where they're not invested. the conversations get more difficult once they've invested, right? And things don't always go smoothly. So do I have a good interaction going with them? Is there a good rapport? Is this venture capitalist adding value? So it's almost a diligence perspective, a diligence item for you as an entrepreneur. By going early to venture capitalists, you get to know them, you get to know their styles, you get to know how they can help you, and if you can work with them or not.
Yeah. Well, and they're plugging in, using you as an example. They'd be plugging into your network.
Yes, absolutely.
Your experience of having done this since the mid-'90s, and everybody that you've come across and things. So, but I think more than that, they hear hard truths, which oftentimes they don't want to. So you have to come in without an ego, without an attitude, and think, listen, and try to learn. So.
Yeah, in venture capital, in scaling these companies, I mean, it's very different than in large companies where it's like, okay, there's an issue. How do we manage this? How do we communicate? How do I maybe move that aside? You're in a startup. You need to find out what is my barrier to growth. Is it my product? Is it the market? I need to pivot because this is a nice to have, not must have. Is it my marketing messaging? Is it my sales targeting? Is it my sales force? And you need to find that out as soon as possible, because if you don't, you're not going to get that next round and you'll be out of business. Right. And so it's a whole different mindset as far as transparency, openness, and actually trying to find out information and peel back the onion in terms of barriers to growth and address those issues. And one other thing you mentioned the expertise. For example, one of our companies, Aware, a cybersecurity company here in town, is now partnered with Facebook and Microsoft. When we did the diligence, we brought in a fellow, Mike Hughes, from Silicon Valley. He had been the worldwide vice president of sales at Barracuda, $1.5 billion company. He now is head of sales at ChargePoint. And he was a diligence, as far as diligence, looking at the company, does this make sense or what have you in the market. There was not a competitive situation there, a conflict of interest. And now he's on the advisory board. And he's introduced us to potential, he's brought in salespeople for us. He's helped us with our sales strategy. He's helped us with our partnership strategy with Facebook. He was, in fact, behind one of the bold things we did there, which was Facebook had a big partner event, a big event, but they didn't allow partners. And so he actually had a very bold idea, which is how about a bus that you then put all the stuff around it that has, the Facebook workplace and Aware, and then have it outside the Moscone Center there in Silicon Valley, where people can walk in and learn about the partnership. And there's a high risk, but Sheryl Sandberg and such, were very positive towards that, and that actually took our relationship with Facebook to the next level. So that
one example.
Yeah,
right?
one example.
So okay. So I will and we'll put it up there. I want to shift to your student experience program because I think that's pretty neat. But before we do that, if somebody does have an interest and they think they might be a candidate, the best thing to do, I guess, would go to your website, get started there.
So OhioInnovationFund.com.
Okay.
And there's a link on there for contacting us.
Right. I saw it. So they could do that. But learn more and get involved now, like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do it too soon, and if it is too soon, you'll learn it's too soon. So but you don't want to do it too late.
Yeah, and we do give feedback, for better or worse, to try and give feedback to every company that contacts us to help them.
So so we're going to shift gears here because you guys do great with interns and students and stuff, which we think is very important too. I mean, you can only get so much education sitting in a classroom for 4 years and then 2 years and things like that. So let's talk about what you guys do to help young people on this path if they want to learn more about being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Our student experience program started out with just back in 2016, normal summer internships. And we'd have 1 or 2 interns. And that went well. The next summer, we tried to expand that. And we tried to expand it and say, hey, we should do this within OIF on an expanded basis with our companies. The company's initial reaction was, some of our limited partners, our great supporters are like Ohio State, Ohio University, Kent State, and others. The initial reaction from our companies was, okay, you want us to babysit your LP's students over the summer. So we actually expanded our program internally to handle a larger number of interns, and then started having them do projects for our companies. These were like partnership strategy, potential partners, potential acquirers, helping with business models, a host of different projects, and that went really well. So now we've got ourselves in a situation where, from an internship program to student experience program, because these interns were primarily juniors going their senior year, and said, I wish I would have been exposed to this a little bit earlier. I probably wasn't ready to come in here and help, but So then we added a shadow experience, a one-day experience where students can come in and learn about venture capital. We actually maybe have them live on a diligence call, or or what have you. Kind of get a little bit of experience to understand. There's one lady that came in that had an interest in art, interest in marketing, a little bit of technology. She went to Aware and learned that she could bring all those things together in terms of user experience and impact on for software. So that was very.
So how early before junior, senior?
We have freshmen coming in.
Okay.
Yeah, we have. So we will probably have somewhere around 50 students each year, probably about 10 interns. 5 or 6 during the summer, and then we have 5 or so during the school year that maybe at 10 hours a week, based on their schedule, and then we'll have about 40 shadow experiences each year. And so we'll touch about 50 students, either exposing them to or giving them in-depth experience in venture capital, and that has now spread to our companies.
Right.
Aware had, I believe, 5 summer interns just this summer, and have had 15 interns, college students, over the last year. Yeah. And as far as what happens with those, our head of director of marketing and communications, Katie, she was an intern from Scripps College at OU. Jill Radersdorf, actually, one of our key investment personnel, actually came through the program from Ohio State. Okay. And actually, one of our interns from the previous summer has formed his own company, esports company called eFuse, just raised over $1 million as a seed investment, and has, I believe, 9 of the top 12 YouTube esports e-gamers now partnering with him as he launches this platform, as well as major colleges like Ohio State. For now, they're starting to do almost like esports recruitment, esports scholarship, esports combine. He's helping to provide the infrastructure recruiting for rating gamers based on their performance online and all those sorts of things. So we see another one of our interns is going to Aware to work in business development. Another one of our interns, Faith Voinovich from Ohio University, just joined us as an associate. Another one is interviewing out at Google. So I mean, they tend to really enjoy it, right. And then it shapes where their careers go.
Okay, well that's awesome. So same thing. Go to the website if you want more information.
Yes.
On that Ohio Innovation.
Yeah, and we have student experience programs shadowing throughout the year. So every month we typically bring in 2 to 3 to 4 students, kind of 1 per week. Yeah. And Jill Radersdorf runs that program for us.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. All right, so I'm going to come back, Bill, in a second. I just want to make one point. If Eileen, if you come to the website here, so in 4 weeks, we're actually starting a little book club with these meetings that Phil and I will get to discuss. So, so Homo Deus is the book that I have up there. Oh, okay. I guess we don't have screen share, so I'll just talk. Homo Deus is the book that we're going to be talking about a month from now. So if you want to be part of that discussion, read that. It's by Yuval Noah Harari, but we'll have that up on the website if you want to see it. A precursor to that book is Sapien. So it's about the growth of humankind and Homo sapiens. So very interesting. But anyway, I want to come back, Phil. Thank you. This was great. I appreciate it. You taking the time.
All right, great.
Please. I mean, I'm a big in the students and wanting to grow and get that education. So go to the website and check that out, and if that's of interest to you. But thanks again.
Thank you.
And good luck to you. And we'll see you all next week.